Scott, we talked about this a couple of days ago with you, but the controversy is still kicking around. The CDC no longer being the ones that hospitals and states are sending their data to. It's now going to HHS. And I know you kind of talked through the other day about how you'd rather see the CDC collecting that and not switching systems midstream. But I think the bigger controversy now is that information is no longer available to the public. The CDC information is back up, but it's only through July 14th. Any new information doesn't seem to be available to the public at this point. Is that a concern? And when do you think we might actually start to see some of that data?
Well, I think the data's going back up. There's a good article in Politico this morning that's worth taking a look at. I had it sent to me by a number of people in the administration that, CDC made the unilateral decision to pull that data off the website after the responsibility for collecting the data was taken away from the agency. That's the essence of what Politico said. So they're implying it was a moment of sort of peak by the agency to do that. I think you're going to see an effort by HHS, from what I'm hearing, to make sure that this data is publicly available. HHS made a decision recognizing that the data systems in CDC were old, and that's true, they were, and that they weren't able to keep up with the collection and distribution of information, and try to recreate those systems inside HHS. Now, I wouldn't have done that. I would have tried to fix what was in CDC rather than try to recreate it. But they made the decision to do that, and it's not an unreasonable decision. I think that they're pretty committed to make sure that that information now flows publicly. But you're right, it's no longer being collected by the CDC. The CDC is still involved in analyzing the information, and they'll be involved in distributing it. They're just not taking charge of running the databases.
But the only public information that's out there is through July 14th. I mean, I know that the CDC chose to bring down that dashboard, then they put it back up when they were told to put it back up, but there's no new information in it. So HHS is the only place that has the new information. To me, that's concerning, the idea that we don't see real-time data on this.
Yeah, I think they're playing catch-up. I think you're going to see it reposted again. But, to be determined. I hear what you're saying, but I think you're going to see them try to put that out. Based on what I'm hearing, I think they recognize they need to make that information available. Again, I would have left it with CDC and tried to rebuild those databases. They made a different decision to try to build a new data set and a new database with Palantir and some other outside vendors.
Johns Hopkins says they don't need this data, that they collect it themselves from the states and hospitals. You go along with the Johns Hopkins numbers and think that that's a good substitute we should be using?
And the COVID tracking project. I mean, if you want to look at daily hospitalizations and total new cases, that's a very reliable source. It's going to be very hard for the government to do anything to systematically suppress this information, because a lot of these hospitals and states are independently reporting to other venues. So the CDC really wasn't the go-to site for most of this information anyway for the people who are watching this. I think it's important that the government provide transparency around the information they're collecting. I think they will, based on what I'm hearing.